Hello and welcome friends to House of Props, I'm Buddy, and this week I will show you the process I used to make my own Arasaka Shingen Mark V from Cyberpunk 2077. In this video I'll show you a fast tip I figured out for painting a carbon fiber pattern, and I'll be trying a new technique I've never attempted before by using watercoloring decals to create all the text graphics on the Shingen. So let's head to the shop, get started, and see how it turns out. After designing the Shingen, I printed the pieces out on my Elegoo and Ender printers using a layer height of 0.15 and an infill of 15%. The prints came out really smooth, but I want to remove any signs of layer lines. Since they printed so cleanly, I'm going to start with some 220 grit sandpaper. As I'm sanding against the print grain, and you'll notice how as I'm doing this, the unevenness in the surface is becoming more visible with the change in color. This has been there from the start, even though it wasn't clear before, and if I had started to prime and paint, the layer lines would have been highly visible. With the pieces sanded, I'm attaching the body of the gun together by squeezing some CA glue into the holes and inserting 2 pieces of 1/2-inch dowel to act as support plugs. Then I add more CA glue to the other side of the dowels and the flat surface of the 3D printed piece. The other body part can be snapped into place, and once tight, I can cure the glue instantly with some zip kicker and immediately continue with the assembly. The same process can be used to attach the mag to the rear of the body. While I get the mag aligned and glued down, I would really appreciate it if you would click the subscribe button if you haven't already. It's completely free to you and will help my channel grow. Plus, if you click the notification bell, you can customize your notifications so you never miss a project. Thank you! I printed the grip and the trigger area in 3 pieces to make sure it would fit properly on the print bed. A piece of 3/8 inch dowel is used to attach the small piece, and the printed square peg and a 1/4 inch dowel is used to attach the trigger grip. Then this grip unit can be attached to the bottom of the body unit. The foregrip gets attached to the front of the grip unit, so the square on the foregrip slips into the notch on the front of the grip unit. The remaining pieces get attached to each other using 2 pieces of the 3/8 inch dowel. Now, this piece will get attached to the top of the body like this, but for now, I'm going to keep it as a separate unit. This will help with painting and finishing the pieces because then I don't have to try and work in the tight gap underneath. To fill the seams in the pieces, I always like to use spot putty. It's highly effective and reasonably affordable, and I'm applying it thickly because it is acetone based and shrinks slightly as it dries. The seam between the body and the grip, and the seam at the mag, I'm going to leave open because they need to look like the Shingen is made of components. The putty also works really well filling in areas that were touching support plates like these. Once the putty was dry, I sanded it smooth with the 220. Now I've taken some of the putty, mixed in some acetone, and I'm brushing this onto the entire surface. This will help fill in any lines left over from sanding and any spots where the layer lines may still be uneven. The putty is toxic, so always work in a ventilated room and avoid getting it on your skin. Once that layer is dry, I'm going to sand it smooth with some 400 grit. This removes brush marks and evens out the surface. It is a messy process, so I always like to lay down a scrap piece of paper to catch the debris. It just makes cleanup a little easier. Okay, now with the pieces sanded and the excess dust wiped away, the Shingen can be primed. I'm using this 2-in-1 filler and sandable primer. It can be applied thickly, and if there are any drips or runs, these can easily be sanded away since it is sandable. As you can see, the pieces are looking pretty clean, but I want to push them even further, so I'm wet sanding them with the 400 grit. This will help polish up the surface. As I dip the sandpaper in water and sand the pieces, I like to stop periodically and wipe away the sludge to check on the results. So this side has not yet received the wet sanding, and you'll notice how it's smoothish, but not as much so as this side, which has been wet sanded. The pieces have been wet sanded, and if some of the putty shows through, that's fine. It's just the surface evening itself out. But guess what? I want to take them even further, so I'm going to wet sand them again, but this time with some 1000 grit. This will shine up the surface and allow the final paint job to really glisten. After the gun has dried, I tape off the nozzle and the mag because now it's time to paint, and I'm starting with a gloss white base. Some of the tiny greeblies are black, but I'm not worrying about masking them off. Now, since this is a gloss and the final paint, I am going to apply thin coats to avoid drips and runs. After the white has dried, I change the tape so the nozzle, the bottom of the foregrip, and the battery are exposed, and these will get a gloss black applied the exact same way as the white. When the black dried, I removed the tape and painted the detail areas with a flat black and a brush by hand. Once the gun receives its final step, the flat black will look glossy. Up next, I'm using this metallic tin and I'm pouncing it onto these strips on either side of the body. By having these areas black first allows the tin to be more iridescent than if it was being painted onto the white. And this wide top strip will get the same treatment. For the top attachment, I tape off everything except this bottom edge. This needs to be a bright metallic silver. The battery area on the grip is airbrushed a dark charcoal gray. Again, having the black base makes it easier to paint the gray and requires less coverage. Now, for the magazine, I started with this metallic ruby and darkened it up a little by adding in some Tuscan red. I then airbrushed this onto the mag. It did take 3 coats to get full even coverage. Now, the body area needs to have a subtle carbon fiber texture, and to achieve this effect, I'm using one of the grippy things used to open jars. By placing the pad over the gun and then airbrushing on a light gray, it creates the perfect carbon fiber pattern without needing any fancy tools or supplies. And if there are any spots where you don't want it, it can be wiped away with a damp Q-tip. Once the carbon fiber is dry, I tape off a rectangle on each side of the body. These areas get sprayed with the same red mixture that the magazine received. The nozzle and the top mount also received some tin and charcoal gray, and I started to glue it into place but later realized I was too premature, it would be awkward, so I removed it and continued on. I had the decals printed on some clear water cling paper. I've never used this product or this technique before, so let's see how it goes. The print needs to soak in water for a few seconds, and while it's soaking, I'm dabbing a little water onto the spot where it goes with my finger. Then the piece can be taken out of the water, and using tweezers, I remove the paper backing. Then I get the clear glue layer in position. Since the base is wet as well, it allows me to move the piece around to get it in the correct alignment. Once I'm happy with its location, I lightly wipe it with a paper towel to flatten and remove the excess water. You don't want to overwork it or the sticker might get damaged, and don't handle it until the water has evaporated and the adhesive has dried. I've got all the decals in place and everything is now dry, so I'm going to spray the pieces with some gloss clear coat. This will seal the decals so they won't peel up, provide a protective layer, and make any of the flat paints look nice and glossy like the rest of the gun. While the clear coat's drying, I applied this decal to a piece of thin plexi, and now I'm painting the rear this bright orange. Once the paint dries, the piece can be glued into place on the rear of the top mount. With the clear coat dry, I finally attached the top mount, and now I'm adding some aging to the Shingen. Nothing too fancy is required, I'm just adding a simple grime wash and then wipe and smear it to leave some behind in the nooks and crannies and create some surface grime. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know how much I like adding aging to my pieces. And the Arasaka Shingen is complete. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. I've never used water cling paper before, but I think I'm hooked and I'll be using it again in the future. It's such a great way to get tiny subtle details without having to use stencils. And having the really clean print to start really helped getting to this point where there are no visible signs that this was 3D printed. If you want to build your very own Shingen, I've posted a link to my files below. I hope you enjoyed this project and found it helpful, so please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment. Share it with all your friends and family, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day. And remember, if you are building any of my builds or using any of my templates, feel free and tag me at House of Props on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, because I would really like to see your fantastic work. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.